Hey, what's up YouTube? If you don't want to play tier elements this format, then here's another fusion strategy that you can try. That deck is going to be Shaddolls. So Shaddolls is the deck I work on every single format, and this format is no exception. I put together a build I think has a great chance against the tier element matchup, and is definitely able to compete with like the top meta decks at the moment. So if you guys enjoyed this type of content, be sure to let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. But with that being said, we're just gonna hop straight into deck profile. Starting off with the Shaddol monsters, we were playing 2 copies of Wendy. Normally I just say this is pretty standard, but there are people saying like you only need 1. The reason I think you want 2 is because it's probably the best Shaddol of like a different attribute in your deck. Because the other one you're playing is like Ariel, but Ariel isn't very good going first. So having access to this means you can make some Clone plays turn 1. And in addition to that, like always being able to set another Shaddol in like a slower game state can be really powerful as well. So that's it for that one. 2 copies of Squamata. I bumped it up to 2 from 1 normally. Like I normally just play 1, because essentially you'd rather just play another utility name. But I like Squamata because this is a level 4, and there's a bigger emphasis on rank 4s in this deck, so you'll be able to take advantage of that fact a little bit more often. But nonetheless, Squamata is a very good one to fuse with. 2 copies of Hedgehog. I think you do need 2. Just being able to send it to the grave allows you to keep filling up your hand. And not much more to say about that. Of course, if you really need to, you can like set it off of Wendy to search like an additional spell or trap for the next turn. And then for the one of Shaddolls, we're playing 1 copy of Ariel, 1 Beast, 1 Falco, 1 Dragon. So there's not too much to say about Beast and Dragon. These are very good utility ones. If anything, you could cut like the Dragon for like another Ariel or something. If your area has like more tier elements, but Dragon's just the most generic one that you want to have in your deck to be able to deal with those back row cards. And of course, Beast is just a very stable card. Ariel is good against a lot of different matchups. It's a different attribute, but also just allows you to be able to hit those key cards out of tier element graveyards, like the ISHIZU shufflers, or like their other names, or Cacaos or something like that. So not much to say about that as well. It also has some great combo potential with the Shaddol incarnation. Finally, Shaddol Falco is a card I know a lot of people don't like, but the reason why I decided to put it into this deck is because of the amount of milling that's on this format. This deck has more ways to mill cards now, and also your opponent sometimes will use the ISHIZU cards to mill you. And Falco is great in that sense because you're able to set it, and then during the next turn you can like target another one of your milled Shaddolls to summon it back, and that's just like instant fusion fodder right away, plus like a link fodder for right off the bat. So I like Falco for that reason. You definitely don't have to play it. It's not the greatest card at all, but it's also just not a terrible one to open with Infusion with. Moving on to the other part of the Shaddol engine, of course we are playing 3 of each fusion spell. Pretty standard, not much to say about this. These cards are great. You need to see them to win. Shaddol Fusion has some extra value against a deck like tier elements because if they're able to actually do stuff on your very first turn, you can resolve its effect to be able to send from your deck to the grave, which can be great. And then I actually do play 1 of each of the Shaddol traps. So Resh I'd say is pretty standard. Schism of course is standard, nothing to say about that. Resh is great because like I mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities to mill. Having this in the graveyard can be very good to extend your plays. And then Shaddol Core, this is the 40th card that I put in. I wanted to be able to have an option to send off of like my Squamata or something to add back a spell or trap. So because I think recurring the spell and traps are really important for your grind game, not only your grind game, but like a lot of your disruption on your opponent's turn will come from your spell and traps. So like El Shaddol Fusion or Shaddol Schism, those are going to be the ways that you play on your opponent's turn. I think having Core is good for that. It also allows you to play some different attribute fusion monsters in the extra deck, but once again, you don't have to play Core if you don't want to. And then finally, 1 copy of Foolish Burial. The honorary Shaddol card, pretty much just any Shaddol card in the deck. For our next engine, we are playing the Dogmatica engine with 3 copies of Nadir Servant, 1 Ecclesia, and 1 Fleur-de-Lis. These are great because Nadir Servant's an insane card in the Shaddol deck. Just being able to send Clone gets your engine started. You can play on the next turn. It doesn't really matter that your extra deck locked. And of course, Ecclesia and Fleur-de-Lis are actually light monsters, so you can go into your best fusion monster in Construct. And they're just generally like a lot of utility off of Nadir Servant. You can send a card like Elder Entity Entis to destroy a card as well. So really, really powerful card. And of course, like, just even hard drawing Ecclesia or Fleur, like, they can be extenders or just like light bodies on the field for your fusion plays. So worst case scenario, even if you draw them, they're not completely dead either. The next card I'm playing, unfortunately, don't have access to it, but this is 3 copies of Tearlaments Sharon. So essentially, Sharon, I'm pretty sure all of you know what Sharon does, but for those who don't, Sharon is essentially able to send a monster from your hand to the grave, special summon it, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the grave. So you're able to trigger your Shaddol monsters off of this card, which is really great. But the other big reason is that if you're able to mill it, or if your opponent, more importantly, mills you with like a ISHIZU's, you can punish them with this card to be able to fusion summon on the very first turn. This gives you the deck another dimension of like fusion summoning where you don't have to use like a spell or trap. So this can be great because you have different ways like Time Thief Redoer to trigger it. You can like send it off of like your fusion spells like Shell Fusion or L-Shell Fusion just to get an extra fusion body out onto the board. And of course, it can just be a great level 4 extender to unbrick your hand as well. So honestly, I can't say enough good things about this card. It's been working really well, and I think it's definitely a new inclusion in Shaddolls that you want to consider. I did decide to play the 2 clowns. I think these are pretty good, honestly. Just being able to make construct is just super important. In addition, these are level 4s, so being able to combo really well with a card like Sharon or just like Swamata, you're able to make rank 4s on top of your fusion plays. But more importantly, they're just light monsters that are very good to fuse with. You can send this off of like Shaddoll Fusion to grab another light monster, grab a level 4 monster or something like that. If you get milled or you milled these off like Sharon, they're also great as well. And then we do play some hand traps. The Cyphering package, and then 3 copies of Effect Veiler. These are all just light monsters, but also just the most generic hand traps out there. They're good against every single matchup in the meta right now, even like Fluanderies, whereas like a card like Ghost Bell or something may not be good against that deck. So that's why you want to play these. Nibiru, I considered it, but until Kashtira comes out, I really wouldn't consider playing it in the main because it's just not very good against a lot of the decks out there. So there's a pretty good like hand trap lineup. Of course, there are light monsters too, which is very key because Shaddol Construct is just your best like fusion monster in the extra deck. So being able to consistently make that is really good. And then finally, the last card, Triple Super Poly. This card's insane. Not even just in Shaddol, it's just in general. Being able to just fuse with any other monster on the field essentially in this deck, because you have so many different like quote-unquote generic fusions in your extra deck, is just honestly incredible. Good going first, good going second. Not much to say about that. That's 40 cards in the main. Moving on to the extra deck now. We are playing 1 Gravity Controller. This is a standard Shaddol card. Just allows you to turn your extra deck Shaddol monsters that you put in the extra monster zone into being able to add back a spell trap right away, and then giving you a dark monster for a card like Winda. It's also kind of funny because if you battle an opponent's monster in the extra monster zone, you can return both like to the deck. So against a card like Avermax, it's kind of funny because you can just like attack, put them both back. So you have out to Avermax in this card already, which is kind of cool. But that's not the reason why we play it. Dark the Dark Charmer. Our deck is entirely dark, pretty much. So being able to have this is incredibly good. And then this is like a flex spot. I decided to play this to out like problematic monsters potentially. So like things like the Ignister Towers, things like Avermax, but you definitely don't have to play this because you aren't really ever getting that many monsters on the board. You can actually consider playing a card like Blackluster Soldier, the Envoy of Chaos, like the BLS Link 3, because you do play high level monsters with like Construct and stuff, and you can make that as a pretty difficult monster to deal with. But this is just a flex spot. You can play really anything you want in this slot. For the rank 4s, 1 Bagusco, 1 Dweller, just the best rank 4s of the format. You do have access to more rank 4 plays with Sheeran, which is also one of the reasons why I play it. Just because these two like Xyz monsters are just so insane in this specific format. So being able to do that is great. I can mention you can play Redoer as well, so you can replace like Underworld Goddess with a Redoer, just in case you ever have like a Squamata plus like a Sheeran on the board, or like a Clown plus a Sheeran, and then you just want a way to trigger the Sheeran. But that's it for the non-fusion monsters, and we got a couple of fusion monsters now. For the non-Shaddol monsters, we have 1 copy of Entis and 1 copy of Dragostapelia. So Entis is great with the Dogmatica engine. You're able to send it off of cards like Nadir Servant. I do play Ultimate Slayer in the side deck as well. It's great for that. Dragostapelia is not only a good super poly target against like the tier matchup, because either they're gonna give you the monsters on the board already, or you can just summon any like shadoll monster and fuse away like their Brucalis or something and make this. But more importantly, you can actually use Sharon to make this in this deck. So if you have like a fusion monster in the grave and you mill a Sharon, or your Sharon gets milled somehow, you're able to put it back and summon this Stapelia out, which can be really good. It also helps you maintain some of your extra deck resources like Winda. Being able to put back the extra copies that you already went through to summon this with Sharon is just honestly incredible. So Stapelia fulfills like many different roles in this deck, and it's just a great fusion monster in general. For the Shaddol monsters, 2 copies of Apclone, 2 copies of Construct, and 2 copies of Winda. I'd say these are really standard. Like, I don't think 3 Construct is really needed. Once you get access to 1, you can loop them with cards like Restshell Incarnation. 2 Windas, I thought about playing 3 because this is like the one you're making the most often with cards like Sharon. Pretty much the only one you can consistently make with Sharon, because like if Sharon gets milled, you have to put back another Shaddol. And they're all darks, so pretty much it's just going to be a El Shaddol Winda. So you can consider playing a 3rd one for sure. Apclone is great fusion monster, but also you send it off of cards like Nadir Servant. It's your #1 target to send, so you want an extra copy to be able to actually summon. And then the last 2 cards, once again, are like flex slots. I went with Anoyatilis and Shekanaga. Anoyatilis is really weird, so I'll explain this a little bit later. But Shekanaga, essentially, if you choose, you can play like the ISHIZU cards in this deck as well. And then you can be able to send it off of cards like Shaddol Fusion or whatnot. So you can tech in like 1 Shuffler or something to be good against the tier limit matchup. This really was also just like a flex slot. I decided you definitely don't need these 2 cards at all. But Anoyatilis, the reason why I'm playing it is because of Dweller. Dweller is a very key monster in this format, and I just wanted Super Poly to potentially be an out to it. So the way that happens is like either your opponent is going to like mill a Shizu tier opponent is going to like mill a bunch of Shaddolls like turn 1. So if you're able to get access to Wendy or Falco, you can just set itself back. And then your opponent's going to end on the Dweller, and then if you have Super Poly, you can activate Super Poly in the draw phase with priority, summon out the Anoyatilis, and that's great. Unfortunately, its effect isn't that great. It really shouldn't be coming up against I can't think of decks where spell and trap card effects are like used to summon monsters, so it's not that great against other than like Eldritch maybe, but like that's really not the reason why we're playing it. But having access to these 2 Shaddol monsters also means, since you're playing core, if they are good against a certain matchup or they're good for the situation, you can absolutely just play these. So yeah, that's gonna do it for the deck profile. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comment section below. I will be taking this deck to a tournament actually, so do stay tuned for that video. It should be coming out in a few weeks after this one. In the meantime, I will be uploading some combos and / test hands for this deck as well. So if you guys ever wanted to learn how to play the deck, then it's the perfect time to do so. So with that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.